Ready or not? Now, I did not have the forethought, of course not, to dig this thing out of the box and find batteries for it, but believe me when I say that lights up. I know.
I can see it in my mind's eye.
It's beautiful, Clark. I think the ones on the bottom aren't blinking, but yeah, if you know, you know. And in order to get that, in order to take this home this evening, you need to tell me there were two spies that returned from the initial outing into Canaan. There was Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of... That's the question, ain't it? No, son of... It's open book. Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of... None, fewer, less, more. Huh? Jephunneh! Hey, here we go. I'm going to give you the box for this as well. The answer is Jephunneh. Don't act like you're surprised. You've heard it before. What do you mean?
It's a common name around here.
I've known at least 4 Jephunnehs in my life. My high school class was filthy with Jephunnehs. It was annoying. We had to call them by their initials. I'm kidding. Of course I'm kidding. All right, well, now that that's out of the way, y'all bow your heads with me. Let's open with a word of prayer this evening. Father God, thank you for this season. Thank you for this time of year, for the cooler weather, for bringing us together in your house tonight to study your word, for the wisdom that lies within it, God, for its powerful, amazing ability to change lives in a supernatural way. God, we're humbled by it, and we ask that this evening you would move among us, that you would mold us and make us into the Christians that you would have us to be through the power of your word. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, lesson 2. We covered chapters 1 and 2 last week, and this week I've got chapters 3 and 4 prepared, and we'll see how we go. So looking at chapter 3 of Joshua, the first 5 verses here. And Joshua rose early in the morning, and they removed from Shittim and came to Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. And it came to pass after 3 days that the officers went through the host, and they commanded the people, saying, When ye see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests the Levites bearing it, then ye shall remove from your place and go after it. Yet there shall be a space between you and it, about 2,000 cubits by measure. Come not near unto it, that ye may know the way by which ye must go, for ye have not passed this way heretofore. And Joshua said unto the people, Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. So what's just happened? What do we remember from chapter 2? Rahab. Right on. So Rahab the harlot had a couple of gentlemen come through the city. They were spies. They were looking everything over. She let them down by a scarlet cord from her window, which was nestled in a house that was in the walls outside. And she told them to wait in the mountains for a few days until they gave up the hunt and then return. And they did. And they went back and they told Joshua everything that happened. And now Joshua, the next morning, Joshua and all the company of Israel, they leave out from Shittim, from their campsite near the Acacia Grove, to go near to the banks of Jordan. And they got right up to the river in the valley area, the floodplain that borders the river, and they camped out right before crossing. There we go. There's a little map right there. So you see, There was a little pointer on this thing earlier. So you see, there's Israel on the right-hand side right there in the plains of Moab. That's where they were encamped. They are moving west. The line that goes north to south there and then empties into the sea at the bottom, that is the Jordan River. And that circled area is Jericho. That is the movement that they are making here. The whole thing took about 3 days. As keep in mind, this wasn't just fighting men. This was the whole company of the Israelites. Men, women, children, animals, possessions. They were all relocating, and all but the women and children from 2 tribes were going to cross over. So this was not a small event. And about the 3rd day, when they had reached the river and started to settle down a bit, the officers of the company went through them all, telling them that their sign that they were about to leave was the Ark of the Covenant. When the ark comes through, you get up, you break camp, you follow after it, but not right up on it. It says, stay back 2,000 cubits. You know how far away 2,000 cubits is? Yeah, about 3,000 feet. 1,000 yards. Y'all want to break that down into football fields? 10 football fields? Yeah. So they would have time to gather their stuff and get up and get going. They would see the ark, and just before it gets out of sight, they were going to be following it. Now, some think that this is reverence, that the ark was holy and it deserved to be treated with a bit of deference, and that certainly is true. But the more practical fact of it is that this was leading them, to show them the way. It was a great crowd of people, and just like it says in the passage we read there, that you've never been here before, do this so that it may point the way from you. Now, better to do that at a good ways in front of them so that everybody can see, rather than have them all pressing in on the ark, because it's more difficult to follow when that's the case. So it's not really leading at that case, and not everybody can see it if you're right up on it. So they said, hey, you give it 2,000 cubits, right around there, and then you start following in on it. And Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves. Get your minds right for this. Spend the evening meditating in prayer and thought. Prepare your hearts to see the hand of God at work in your lives. Tomorrow something is going to happen. Prepare yourselves now for what God is about to do. Joshua says it takes a little effort on their part to truly understand and see the working of God in their lives. You don't just show up after being told that God is going to act and nonchalantly observe it, and if it happens, cool, and if it doesn't, then I guess, we'll work something else out. That's not how they were to treat God. That's not how we are supposed to treat God. And that's why I love the Old Testament, is we see little nuggets like this buried all over the place whenever we go digging for it. We're told by example here that if you are really expectant of God doing something, you prepare yourself for it. You should clear your mind, pray, ready yourself to see the hand of God moving. But what's the flip side of that? If you don't pray and focus on God and try to find your bearings before coming to church or coming to a Bible study or some kind of ministry or the like, then you don't really expect to see God moving while you're there. And I hope that's convicting to some people, because it convicts me. We don't want church to be an empty, foregone conclusion of a social event, just a gathering. You should never show up to church and leave surprised that God was among us. I think God was really there today. I was surprised the message spoke to me. So, you're surprised that you were convicted of sin or drawn down to the altar, or surprised that we witness a soul being saved, some visitor God really took hold of them, and what a shock they were down at the altar. I know that's sometimes how things are, right? We hold church at least 52 times a year. It can get to be kind of repetitive there. We're human. We lose sight at times of why we do what we do, and sometimes we show up to service just because that's what we do on a Sunday, isn't it? What else are you going to do? You don't want to spit in God's face and stay home and watch a football game. You don't want to actively do that sign of aggression. So instead, you show up without thinking to a service that you don't intend to really get anything out of. And we see other people that seem to be moved by God, and a pastor that seems to be stirred by the word, and it starts to take hold of us, and maybe we start to feel the Holy Spirit, and you start to think, man, where did this come from? I was just going to church today, and all of a sudden, God showed up. That's odd. Well, it shouldn't be.
This is a really big deal.
It is.
I mean, if you think about it, this is what their parents were on this journey and died in the wilderness. They've been wandering around for 40 years. This has been the promise of the promised land. I think of it kind of like, I don't know what the show is, where they remodel somebody's house and they have the big screen of the old house and they roll it back, and everybody decided this is their home. When they walk across Jordan, they are no longer strangers in a strange land. They're home. This is home. That's a kind of a big deal. You're home.
And what he's telling them there is, it is a big deal, and you need to go home and clear your head and come to terms with how big of a deal this is. Don't come into this thing nonchalantly tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, you're seeing the culmination of a 40-year journey, a 40-year journey that killed your parents because of their disobedience. It's all wrapping up right now, and there's a certain amount of reverence and intent that should come with something like that. Verses 6 through 8. And Joshua spake unto the priests, saying, Take up the ark of the covenant, and pass over before the people. And they took up the ark of the covenant, and went before the people. And the Lord said unto Joshua, This day will I begin to magnify thee in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. And thou shalt command the priests that bear the ark of the covenant, saying, When ye are come to the brink of the water of Jordan, ye shall stand still in Jordan. So this is the next morning. There's a bit of a time jump right between there. That other one was saying, hey, go home tonight, consecrate yourselves. And now it's saying, and Joshua spake unto the priests and saying, take up the ark. So this is the next morning here. God said to Joshua, this day I'm going to solidify and build you up and show the people your office is genuine. I'm going to cement that in the heart of the Israelites here. God says this is going to be the first thing in a long list of things that show the people that you are their leader, that you rightfully follow God, and that they should rightfully follow you. Just as they revered and obeyed Moses, they should revere and obey you in exactly the same way. And it's interesting to compare this. God had similar words to Moses back in Exodus chapter 19. It says, And the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord. So just as Moses had the law, Joshua had the river crossing. There were pivotal moments in their lives where God came in and said, you know what, I'm going to make a showing of this so that the people know that my hand is on you. It's two events where God moved visibly just for the sake of installing faith in the people of God, in his mouthpiece, in the person that he has chosen here. The difference is, while Moses' congregation was witness to a whole host of miraculous wonders up to the point of receiving the law, Joshua's congregation had only heard of most of those things. Now, they still had manna. We're just about to lose manna, but we're not there yet. They still have manna. We haven't been told that the pillar of fire, pillar of cloud has been removed. So Joshua's congregation has seen God in their lives. They've grown up with that. They've seen that same miraculous thing for 40 years every day, and it makes it a little less miraculous in their eyes. So what they're seeing here is going to be a welcome and fresh, a new experience, a stoking of that kind of fire there. They wake up every morning and they see manna. They've stopped questioning the manna. They've stopped really realizing where that comes from. Yes, it's miraculous, but they still have it. And after 40 years of doing absolutely anything, 40 years of the Aurora Borealis, 40 years of the most miraculous thing that you can think of, that if you're seeing it every day, it becomes a little less miraculous after 40 years here. But what we're seeing right now is Joshua telling them, listen, something miraculous is about to happen afresh in your eyes. God's going to show you exactly just how much his hand is on this expedition. Verses 9 through 17. So this is a little longer here. And Joshua said unto the children of Israel, come hither and hear the words of the Lord your God. And Joshua said, hereby ye shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Hivites and the Perizzites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Jebusites. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth passeth over before you into Jordan. Now therefore take you 12 men out of the tribes of Israel, out of every tribe a man, and it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand upon an heap. And it came to pass, when the people removed from their tents to pass over Jordan, and the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, and as they that bear the ark were come unto Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bear the ark were dipped in the brim of the water, for Jordan overfloweth all his banks at this time of the harvest, that the waters which came down from above stood and rose upon an heap very far from the city Adam, that is beside Zaratan. And those that came down toward the sea of the plain, even the salt sea, failed and were cut off. And the people passed over right against Jericho. And the priests that bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan. And all the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed clean over Jordan. So Joshua gathers together all the people. He says, everybody watch close. Look at what's about to happen. The hand of God is about to move right in front of your very eyes. And Joshua answers for them the question that's been consuming their thoughts since they arrived. How are we going to cross that river? Because that's where they're at. They're at the banks of a river. The Jordan River is not the Nile, I'll grant you that, but it's not some small creek either. On average, it is 90 to 100 feet across and anywhere from 3 to 10 feet deep. But as verse 15 says, this was the time of year when it was constantly flooded. This was the rainy season, or the season where snow from the nearby mountain range was melting and draining down and being collected to flow into the Jordan. So it's wider and deeper and flowing a little faster than it does all the rest of the year. Now, people, there's no way they'd be getting women, children, herds of sheep, herds of cattle, all their possessions across a river flowing like that. So Joshua gathers all of the people together and tells them, if you have doubts about our conquest, I understand, but today you're going to see something you've never seen before, something you can't explain in any other way but the hand of God. And by this miracle, you're going to know that our conquest of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Hivites and the Perizzites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Jebusites, you're going to know that God's hand is on the conquest of these wicked people. Our conquest is righteous and it is assured. And you will know that by the sign that you see today. You want to know how we're going to cross that river? We're going to do it on dry land. We're going to send the ark out in front of us, and as soon as the feet of the priests hit the water of the Jordan River, just as soon as they step out in faith and plant their feet in that river, you will see the waters of the Jordan be parted and pile up in a heap, and we will cross over on dry ground. And it came to pass exactly that way. The priests bearing the ark stepped onto just the brim of the Jordan River, and as soon as their feet were planted, the waters stopped. The waters separated and they piled into a heap. You know, in Exodus 14, it was a little different with the Red Sea. God sent an east wind that drove the waters apart, and they separated and they built up not just into a heap, but in walls on both sides, into great walls that went on both sides of the passage. It was still dry ground there, but they could look while they were passing through and see walls of water on both of their sides there. Here it was just a heap, but it was also a stopping of the flow of a river. Not just a sitting body, but a river. And that's miraculous too in its own way. Stopping a river means, as it says in verse 13 here, it means cutting off the waters from those coming above. That means stopping a flow. That means the whole river would have to slow down and stop in order for that heap on one side to keep from getting bigger and bigger like a dam. Because if God just said, and just put his hand down in the river and everything kept flowing like normal, it would just build up. The whole river had to slow down and stop for a little bit. And that is miraculous in a completely different way from just separating a sitting body of water like the sea. And in case there are any of y'all who doubt that God is a Texan, you can look at verse 17 where it says, God held the waters and the priests with the ark stood firm on dry ground for how long? Until the people were passed clean over. And I've never heard more of a Texan phrase in all of the Bible there. They were passed clean over the Jordan. That's chapter 3. Chapter 4. Oh.
On May the 16th, 2021, you preached on that passage. Your mama recorded it.
Well, all right. There's no qualitative assessment in that. She's not saying it's good. She didn't say it was bad. It was memorable. There's a little date and some stars. Okay. Chapter 4, unless we got anything. Oh boy, we might be out of here early, man. Chapter 4, verses 1 through 10. Another long one here. And it came to pass, when all the people were clean passed over Jordan, that the Lord spake unto Joshua, saying, Take you 12 men out of the people, out of every tribe a man, and command ye them, saying, Take ye hence out of the midst of Jordan, out of the place where the priest's feet stood firm, 12 stones, and ye shall carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place where ye shall lodge this night. Then Joshua called the 12 men whom he had prepared of the children of Israel, out of every tribe a man. And Joshua said unto them, Pass over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of Jordan, and take ye up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, according unto the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What mean ye by these stones? That ye shall answer them, The waters of Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over Jordan, the waters of Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be for a memorial unto the children of Israel forever. And the children of Israel did so as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones out of the midst of Jordan, as the Lord spake unto Joshua, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, and carried them over with them unto the place where they lodged, and laid them down there. And Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests which bear the ark of the covenant stood, and they are there unto this day. For the priests which bear the ark stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished that the Lord commanded Joshua to speak unto the people, according to all that Moses commanded Joshua. And the people hasted and passed over. God tells Joshua to gather up the 12 men that had been set aside in verse 12 of chapter 3. So we kind of glossed over that because it was just citing aside verse 12. It says, Now therefore take you 12 men out of the tribes of Israel, out of every tribe a man. So we had a little side note of a verse kind of interjected into the narrative right there. Those 12 men were sitting aside, probably didn't cross with the whole body of everybody else, but were standing back out of reverence on the other side of the Jordan, on the eastern side of the Jordan. And Joshua tells these 12 men to go take large stones from the area of the Jordan where the priests had stood and carry them across. Let's see, I've got another. There we are. That's a fun little illustration there, isn't it? You see the priests with the ark, you see a heap of water, and then you see 12 men gathering stones up out on their shoulders. Now we find on several occasions through the Old Testament large stones set up to commemorate remarkable events. Jacob, when he saw Jacob's ladder, when God came to him in that dream, he woke up, and the stone that he had laid his head on, he set up a memorial to it. He more or less set it up as an altar, a pillar right there. He like stood it up on its end, and he called it something. I don't remember what he called it, honestly. Jacob also, on his return from Padan Aram in Genesis 35, built another one by the same patriarch. He set up a bunch of stones between him and Laban when they came to peaceful terms. I believe it was a dispute over wells that they were going back and forth with each other. They set up another, they say, all right, we're going to have peace, and they set up another stone memorial right there. Later on in the Old Testament, Samuel, to mark the site of victory over the Philistines, set up and y'all probably know this word, Ebenezer. Y'all ever heard that word? It's not just a name, Ebenezer. Ebenezer means, it's a combination of two words. It means stone. It means help. Ebenezer, stone help. In Samuel, it was a memorial stone which was erected between the small towns of Mizpah and Shen when the Lord defeated the Philistines in 1 Samuel. And Samuel named the stone Ebenezer and said, thus far, Yahweh has helped us. It's Ebenezer. It's a fitting name then for, where do we all know Ebenezer from? Scrooge. A heart of stone helped along to change. It's a fitting name for a character in Dickens' novel that goes through such a change like that, from being stony and being helped along by, Dickens doesn't come flat out and say it's God, but the ghost of Christmas past is certainly portrayed as angelic, and the ghost of Christmas future is portrayed as more like the angel of death. So somewhat divine, but not quite, not directly stated in such. We know they're large stones because it says, put them up on your shoulders in verse 5. They're not just casually carrying these stones in their hands. It's probably just whatever they could pick up and carry. So I don't know, 50, 75, 100-pound stones, big old rocks, whatever they could carry. And being that large, when they brought them across, it wasn't some small little pile of rocks like a headstone or something like that. This would have been a distinct, recognizable formation of 12 large rocks. Nobody would look at this and think that this occurred naturally. Maybe they set them down in a pattern, maybe they stacked them on top of each other, maybe they put them in the formation of an altar. We don't have any idea how they set the rocks down, but nobody was going to look at it and say, oh, look what Mother Nature did. Look how these stones just happen to be laying here, just like we don't look at Stonehenge and think that rocks just happen to tumble down from a mountain and stack themselves on top of each other. And they did all of this. Why? As a memorial, to remember, to carry forward into the coming generations what God has done. Matthew Henry says in his commentary, the works of the Lord are so worthy of remembrance, and the heart of man is so prone to forget them, that various methods are needed to refresh our memories for the glory of God, our advantage, and that of our children. What God does in our lives is so worthy of remembrance, and we are so feeble. You do whatever you need to do to keep mindful, to remember what God has done in your lives. Because memory is a powerful thing. Memory is a blessing. The bad ones teach us things. The good memories comfort us, give us strength. I talked a little bit about it last Saturday. We draw strength and comfort from memories. We remember God working in our past, and it strengthens our faith in the future, that the God who has come through for us over and over and over in the past is not going to abandon us. Why would he? All the time, over and over, when I find myself worrying about anything, really. I can always find a time in my past where I was worrying about that, and God just came through every time. That's memory. That's what God has given us here. And even when memories fade, even when we look back and you go, I know God came through for me in the past financially. I'm all worried about money. I've never missed my mortgage payment. I can't quite remember the details of how it came to be. I can't quite remember some of the finer details. It's all getting a little hazy and fuzzy with age, but the knowledge is still there that God has come through for you, and that is a comfort. That is what we draw strength from here. Now, this is a people that have not seen all of the acts of God that their parents were blessed to see, and God wants them to remember. To look back in 20 years, when these 12 stones, these 12 big stones are all grown over with moss and grass, and they're kind of worn and dirt starting to gather up at the bottom of it, and then somebody, one of their kids, while they're walking by it, says, "What are those?" And so, "Oh, sit down, let me tell you what those are." I will tell you what those are because you need to know. Now, recall how just impossibly dry the ground was when they crossed over the Jordan River, when God brought them into this land, and they'll tell their kids every detail, and they might be able to go on and tell their kids everything that their fathers told them about it. That's what God wants out of this. This is a memorial to the hand of God working in their lives. And Joshua also this time, unprompted by God, took 12 stones and placed them in the midst of the riverbed where the priests had stood. So Joshua creates his own memorial as well. So there's one on the banks in the promised land, and then Joshua took 12 stones and he put them in the dry riverbed where the priests had been standing. And that one, it says, is still there to this day. Now, you'd have to know where to look for it to find it because it's at the bottom of a river. That one probably would last a bit longer than the other one because the other one would be subject to weather, to jerks coming around and knocking the thing over or something like that. But one that's at the bottom of a river that's being overrun with water that nobody knows is there unless you know to really look for it, that one probably lasts a good while there because it's being covered in silt and cemented on the bottom of a riverbed. Verses 11 through 18. And it came to pass, when all the people were clean passed over, that the ark of the Lord passed over, and the priests in the presence of the people. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh passed over, armed before the children of Israel, as Moses spake unto them. About 40,000 prepared for war passed over before the Lord unto battle to the plains of Jericho. On that day the Lord magnified Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him as they feared Moses all the days of his life. And the Lord spake unto Joshua, saying, Command the priests that bear the ark of the testimony that they come up out of Jordan. Joshua therefore commanded the priests, saying, Come ye up out of Jordan. And it came to pass, when the priests that bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord were come up out of the midst of Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet were lifted up unto the dry land, that the waters of Jordan returned unto their place, and flowed over all his banks as they did before. So all the Israelites crossed over the Jordan except for the women, children, and livestock of the 3 tribes that had previously worked out a deal with Joshua, with Moses technically, but carried over to Joshua. Joshua was about to negate that deal there. Y'all remember that? They said, hey, we've got livestock. This is great land for livestock on the east part of Jordan. We'd love to stay here. Moses got a little mad with them, and then he thought about it, and he said, you know what? That's fine. Y'all want to stay here? You can stay here. But your men are going to go armed across the Jordan with us. They're going to fight until all their brethren have what has been promised to them. They're not going to sit this one out. And they all agreed to that. So when it says 40,000 there, that's not saying the whole host. Like of 2 million people, 40,000 were armed. It's saying of that the 2 tribes and the half tribe of Manasseh, they sent over about 40,000 armed men, while everybody else, the women, children, and the livestock and everything, stayed on the eastern side of the Jordan. And those 40,000 men went armed across the Jordan on dry ground, ready to fight, to see that the rest of their brethren had the land that was promised to them before they would return home and rest with their families. And as soon as the priest carrying the Ark of the Covenant stepped onto dry land, the river resumed its natural course and began to run it at its normal strength all at once, at the same rainy season, overflowing the banks. It all just returned right back like it was, and that did it. Now, that wasn't the whole point of the miracle. The point of the miracle was to get the children of Israel across, but that cemented in the minds of the children of Israel that Joshua is God's man going forward. Joshua is the mouthpiece. Joshua is the anointed one. Joshua is the one on whom God has his hand. They knew without a doubt that God had his protection and his guidance, and God had the ear of God in the event that they messed up, because, oh man, Moses had to go and intercede on their behalf more than once, so they're taking note. Joshua is that guy now. If we find out that we get into the promised land and we do something bad and we need to go begging God's forgiveness, it's Joshua that we need to go knocking on you can't really knock on the door of a tent, can you? They need to go, I don't know, what do? Slapping the flap of a tent and trying to get his attention. That's where you go whenever you're in trouble with God now. It's Joshua. And they feared and revered the man for it. Verses 19 through 24. And the people came up out of Jordan on the 10th day of the first month and encamped in Gilgal in the eastern border of Jericho. And those 12 stones which they took out of Jordan did Joshua pitch in Gilgal. And he spake unto the children of Israel, saying, When your children shall ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What mean these stones? Then ye shall let your children know, saying, Israel came over this Jordan on dry land. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of Jordan from before you until ye were passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up before us until we were gone over, that all the people of the earth might know the hand of the Lord, that it is mighty, that ye might fear the Lord your God forever. It's amazing to see in that first verse that we just read there. This is just about 40 years exactly from the exodus of Egypt. We're talking the same month. Most calculations say it's give or take about 5 days. 40 years. 40 years God's children crossed over the Jordan into the land of promise. And Joshua told the people that when their children ask what these stones mean, you tell them the Lord your God not only parted the waters just like he did in the Red Sea, but dried up the ground underneath it so that we might pass over. The same God then, the same God now. And 100 years from now, when a whole other generation was going to be asking, it's the same God then. And that's the real miracle of it right there. That's really what he's trying to relate here. He's saying when your children ask about this, you say, yes, God did this for us. The same God was there for our ancestors. The same God will be there for you. There's a kind of foundational strength in performing the same miracle for two different generations of Israelites to show that it is the same God, that God, the true God, is unchanging, that he has not grown weak, his arm hasn't grown short, he's not tired of dealing with the people either, he's not running out of energy or anything. His plan is moving along exactly as he planned it to. And the same God that had the power to part and dry up the Red Sea parted and dried up the Jordan, and that same God is here for you and for your children and for your children after you. Every generation that comes up ends up asking the same questions about God as the ones that came before, right? We think, as we go through seminaries, we go through Bible study, we start reading the Bible, and we start reading things and going, oh man, really, that I didn't know that. Has anybody ever thought of this before? Yeah, somebody's probably thought of it before. We all end up asking the same questions about the faith over and over and over and trying to square it with ourselves. And society changes far more than the church, and certainly more than the Word of God. It's unchanging here, but we all wrestle with the same questions generation after generation after generation. And it's our job to take that knowledge, to take the Word of God and to pass it on to that next generation, to pass that baton. It's like a relay race. I've used that illustration before. It doesn't matter how fast the guy is off the starting line. It doesn't matter how fast the guy on the second leg is or how fast the guy after that is. It doesn't matter how fast I run, how fast my father ran, or how fast my children run. If I mess up passing that baton, the whole race is lost. You can be the fastest man in the world. If you can't pass the baton from one person to the next, if you mess that up, then you're disqualified. That's it. You drop that baton, you don't pass along the knowledge, the memories, the wisdom, the theology, the faith, what you know of the church. If you don't pass that along, it hurts. Now, Christ Church will never go away. That's not going to happen. We're not going to dwindle out of existence. We're not going to be persecuted into nothing. But we have a direct impact on whether or not the church thrives in America. And if it doesn't, if it fades into nothing in America, then guess what? It's still going to thrive somewhere. It's still got Africa. The church, Christianity is amazing. You know, Islam is centralized within Arabian countries. Buddhism is centralized in China. A lot of religions are centralized ethnically, and they don't leave those ethnic borders. Christianity started in the Middle East, moved to Rome, moved to Africa, moved to the United States. It has no ethnic borders. It doesn't know a nationality. It is the one true God. It exists outside of the parameters that everybody else assigns to their religions here. If the church, because of us, fails in the United States of America, the church does not fail. The church will go on until God decides to call us home. It may not be here, it may be somewhere else, but the church will never fail. God will not let his church fail. The gates of hell will not prevail against it. But it's our job to pass that baton. And honestly, that's 2 chapters. And that's all I prepared for this evening. Yes, sir.
I see an amazing illustration going back in chapter 3, verse 7 and verse 8 with what the Lord does with Joshua. Because some 1,450 years later, he would do the same thing with his son in the midst of the Jordan. And that they will know that I will be with thee.
John the Baptist baptizing Christ in the midst of the Jordan River.
Standing in the Jordan.
You could have been standing by that monument that was underneath the water.
We have no way of knowing, do we?
Yeah. You know, that's a great point, Becky. Probably was.
Seems like though with all the sonar and everything today, that somebody would find that.
For 12 stones to be on the bottom of a riverbank, you could probably find it. They would have worn away. They would have been covered in silt. They would have eventually, the silt may have even compacted to the rocks, making them even, one large formation indistinguishable from 12 separate stones. We don't really know. I don't know. It's not something we need to go hunting
But
for.
it's odd that they record it is still there today.
Yeah, that's Joshua saying. Once they're in Canaan there, he's writing to the people in Canaan, telling them, you guys, if you doubt me, go find it. Go to Jericho and head east. Start digging through the river. It's still there today. You can find the 12 stones at Gilgal, and then you just head east a little bit more, and you'll be in the middle of the Jordan. You can start digging around right there, and you'll find it.
That's just like in the Red Sea. You still find the chariots with the wheels pulled off.
That's what I read. Yeah. Well,
The wheels pulled off. Not fell off, pulled off.
well, that's always been the most amazing part to me of the miracle. People can explain away somewhat the parting of waters, or even I've seen naturalists say that the wind came and removed the waters to where it was shallow enough for them to make it through, 2 million people to make it across the Red Sea, and there was a small atoll here or something like that. That's crazy. It says dry land. Not only did God separate the waters, but he dried up the water-soaked muck at the bottom of the Red Sea and at the bottom of the Jordan to where you could get across. Because do you know how hard it would be to get across with all those people, women, children, livestock, possessions, everything?
Cards.
It'd be you wouldn't be.
It's cards.
So I did a warrior dash one time, which is a 5K, and I'm not an avid runner, but I did a 5K one time, the warrior dash with little obstacles and everything. You know, the very first obstacle they make you do is it's about a chest-high river that you go through, and then you come up a bank. And there was even a rope guiding us in case anybody got lost, because you go through it in like heats of 50 people at a time. And man, going down into that river, easy, no problem at all. Coming out of that thing, slick as could be. It was so slick because it was a steep riverbank, and I was not the first heat. We weren't the first people to go through that river and start climbing up. And by the time you go through your heat and there's 50 people in front of you and you're bringing up the back, y'all may not be bringing up the back if you did it, but I was bringing up the back of my heat, and I'm clawing my way out of that river. There's nothing to hold on to because there's been hundreds of people in front of you grabbing for anything that there was to hold on to, and they got it and you don't have it, and now you're trying to claw your way out of a river just to get up out of the bank. Would have been about similar to that if it were still wet. And I can't imagine doing that while holding my little girl's hand with a bag draped over my back, trying to hold a rope for a donkey or something at the same time, trying to get through. It would be impossible. But God separated the waters and dried up the ground that had been soaked by the waters of the sea and that river for years. Years and years, that water had been soaking into the ground, and God dried it up to where people could walk across it without because even still in the exile, they had their sandals, their clothes weren't ripped or torn or worn. Yes, ma'am.
And can you imagine how wide that passageway had to be?
Yeah, it wouldn't be single file.
Yeah.
We have trouble getting through this hallway after church. We say amen, and you wow, right there for the parking lot. I can only imagine 2 million people trying to do it. It'd have to be a pretty good size.
Plus, they knew what was behind them. They knew what was coming after them.
Yeah.
And I mean, there would have to be that fear, that anticipation. Let's do it. Let's get the rush of it, because they knew Pharaoh's army was coming.
Which went so well for them.
We often compare crossing the River Jordan to us crossing the River of Death to the Promised Land. I think there are some valid comparisons there. After the children of Israel had wandered in the wilderness and gone through all of the problems and issues, et cetera, for all of the years, now they're coming home. They have to cross this river that seemed insurmountable, but God dries it up and allows them to walk across on dry land. We go through this life, and it's very much the same way. There's a lot of trouble, a lot of things happening, a lot of pain, a lot of problems, et cetera, to get to our promised land, to get to heaven. We have to cross that Jordan River.
That's why I love the old hymns. Some of the new songs are great, but the old hymns that talk about Jordan, that truly romanticize it in the way that it should be recognized. It is the fruition of your struggle into God's promised land for you. It's the same with Ebenezer. Come thou fount of every blessing. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy strength I've come. I love the fact that, not knowing what an Ebenezer is, you hear that song and you're drawn to go look it up and figure it out, and then lo and behold, you find it's in the Bible. I love things like that. You don't see that a lot of the time with the newer music there, but it's
There's a beautiful old song. The name of it is "I Won't Have to Cross Jordan Alone," and that is just what he was talking about. That parallel that they draw of it being the
It's like
On
Deep
Jordan's
River.
farm,
Love singing that
it's
song.
damn and cast a wishful eye.
Deep River. No, it's my home is over Jordan.
Oh, it is, but they were singing it in that movie about the Mississippi.
Movie.
The movie, yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's Rocket Homer's time.
My comments not to leave this as a 1-minute discussion.
Right on.
And I'm going to comment on something at the beginning, we were talking about what expectations are when you come to church.
Yeah.
To me, that's an important thing we talked about tonight, because it applies directly to us. But for years, I had to study people because of the job I had. And so I used to study people coming in to church or leaving church, and are they coming for what reason? And so I developed a philosophy of what Sunday was. You get up in the morning, drink coffee, have your pancakes, get in the car, drive past God's creations, pay attention to them or not, pull in the parking lot, get out of the car, walk up the sidewalk, walk up the stairs, and walk towards the door. When we cross that door, we're leaving the world of sin and temptation and stepping into the house of God. And the good thing is, in the house of God, God invited us to come. We accepted, and when we got here, He was at home. It wasn't like He invited us and then He didn't show up. He was at home, where if we're talking to friends, He's in the middle of the conversation, smiling. If we go to the choir, He's up there singing with us. If we're sitting in His house with Him, and we sit down after the brief